Wait, how's that song again? It's like, sound like a doo-ba-dee-ba-dee-ba-ba-bibbidi-ba-ba-dee-boo. Put them together and what have you got? Bibbidi-ba-ba-dee-boom. That darn movie show. Hey guys, how's it going? It's Clarice here. So for anyone who didn't check out my last review, which was of the classic 1950 Walt Disney animated Cinderella, which you can check out here. This is basically my part deux of my little two-parter review in which I'll be reviewing the brand new live action take on the classic Cinderella story. And so from my last review you'll know that I am not a huge fan of what Disney's been doing recently with these live action remakes of their classic movies, thinking particularly like Maleficent and Alice in Wonderland. But I was feeling a little more optimistic about this one. I had seen some good reviews going in and I liked the trailer a lot. I thought the trailer was really stunning and wow, like this movie managed to just completely exceed my expectations. Like this new Cinderella movie is a delight. It is a delight. Kenneth Branagh, you genius little classically trained man, because the decision that he made with this movie is so fantastic because he basically treats it like it's an adaptation of a classic Jane Austen novel. It's basically like Mansfield Park but with talking mice, and that is a perfect way to tell this story because it makes it work within a real world live action context without seeming silly, but also without losing that lightness and that sense of pure magic. And I think that's something that's really been missing from all these like CGI swamped live action adaptations. It's about finding that sense of balance. You know, in the first chunk of the movie, like her childhood and her parents dying and the introduction of Lady Tremaine, like it just felt like a classical novel. It just felt so much like an Austen novel. It had that lightness and that sort of restraint and touch of elegance. It's all about aristocratic country living and airs and manners, and especially like the introduction of the ugly stepsisters reminded me so much of the fact that in like every Austen adaptation there's always that one, like very spoilt, very shrill young woman who is always screaming about the latest fashions in Paris and chasing soldiers down the street at the market. And the screenplay, which is maybe the sort of genesis for this whole Austen-y tone, is very literary, and I think that's a very ballsy move from Disney. It's a very awesome move from Disney to not try and update this movie so they can be like, down with the kids. And there's one scene in particular that I really loved, and it's when Cinderella's father asks her what she'd like him to bring back from his business trip, and she says like something like the first branch which brushes past your shoulder. And the idea is that he'd have to carry this branch with him the whole way through the trip, so he'd be constantly reminded of her, and she would be happy when she finally received the branch because it would mean that he'd returned home. And I think that's just such like a poetic sentiment. I think it's something really beautiful and old world romantic, and I don't know, it's nice to see that in a Disney movie, in a movie that so many kids are gonna watch. But while this movie is definitely very literary in tone, it's definitely not dry or dull. It's got that lightness and it's got a sense of fun, and there's a very generous dose of comedy there. I mean, Rob Brydon makes a cameo, who I love, and definitely Helena Bonham Carter's performance as the fairy godmother is very comedic, and I think she does such a great job because she captures that very specific type of person you'll meet in the UK, who is someone who is so posh and so aristocratic that they just have no concept of how the world functions, so they just sort of bumble through life just constantly like excited and bemused and confused by everything that they touch. And it's sort of how I like to imagine Helena Bonham Carter might be like in real life. I love her. Admittedly, not every joke works. A few of the jokes sound very odd in contrast with this very classical romantic dialogue. I think maybe some of those jokes were improvised, which is why they sound way too modern for this movie, and then a lot of the other jokes are really cheesy. A few of them are cringeworthy amounts of cheesy. But I think that's exactly the kind of humour this movie needed. I think you needed something to make sure the sort of the kids in the audience weren't feeling alienated, and I think if you took the humour somewhere that was too subversive or wacky or surreal or crazy, like, it just would have spoilt the entire tone of the whole movie. So just sometimes you just need bad jokes, guys. And a big reason to see this movie, of course, is the production design and all the costumes. There's actually an exhibition in Leicester Square in London at the moment, and I think it's going to travel all around the world. So if you can go see this exhibition, definitely check it out, because it is beautiful and it's so elaborate and it's so just wonderful. And what's so great is that to create this world, they picked up on all these different elements from different periods in history, but sort of real things. So there's elements from a lot of the stuff from the Regency period, so that sort of fits in with the Austen novel idea, but there's also a mix of stuff from the earlier Georgian period. But then also for Lady Tremaine, her costumes feel much later, maybe like the 1940s or whereabouts then. And that's really interesting in sort of establishing her character. But really, there's nothing in this movie that feels purely fantastical. It all sort of feels like it's based in some sort of reality. Like, even the big magical carriage is definitely based on the design of royal carriages of the past. And that's what makes the CGI work so well here, because they actually place that CGI within a real world context. Like, they actually filmed in real locations. Like, they went to the old Royal Navy College in Greenwich in London, like real places, so that when they actually finally used the CGI, it felt genuinely magical. Like, with the dress transformation, like, oh my god, and it's like swirling and there's sparkles and butterflies, and it's just amazing. Because like up until that point they were really careful about when they used the CGI, so when it finally happened, it felt like this huge moment. It felt like pure legit Disney magic. Legit! And this movie is definitely very faithful to the original animation without being too overbearing. The sort of wink wink direct references are kept very subtle. Like, Cinderella only sings a couple of notes from Sing Sweet Nightingale, but then they also have one of the ugly stepsisters singing a completely different song but still doing a terrible job, which was nice. I thought that was a nice balance. And also Gus Gus was there, which made me so happy, because I was really worried how they were going to do the mice, whether they were going to include the mice at all, but the mice were there and they were so cute. And I loved how they sort of made it so that the little squeaking of the mice sounded just almost like it could be the voices from the animation, but you could never quite tell whether they were talking or just squeaking. I thought that was a nice touch. And let's talk about Lady Tremaine for a moment, because that is great character development, because she still gets to be super evil in this movie, still deliciously evil. Like, Cate Blanchett just like relishes in that role. She just has like the best cackle on the planet. It's incredible. But they give her character just like enough of a hint of depth, just a little sort of glimpse into her motivation, so that it makes it a more well-rounded character and a more believable character, and it creates this sort of link between Lady Tremaine and Cinderella and makes them representations of two very different ways to deal with grief and with tragedy. And so you can either turn all of that pain and sadness outwards and onto other people like Lady Tremaine does, or you can, as the sort of mantra of the whole movie is, be like Cinderella and have courage and be kind. Because, you know, it's a brave thing to experience all that pain and yet to be able to rise above it and not to let it corrupt you. And that is, I don't know, it's a pretty cool message for this movie, I think, because, you know, as much as I joked that in the original animation Cinderella is secretly psychotic, in reality she is a pretty passive character, and that movie doesn't particularly have a very healthy message. But I think here, you know, the makers of this new Cinderella realised that all they needed to do was just slightly shift the focus and create this sort of link between protagonist and antagonist, and they could completely transform the entire message of this movie and create something quite inspiring and sort of beautiful. Also, one last thing, I know I said in the last Cinderella review video I was going to do a second Disney bound, and so this is it. I don't think it's surprising what I am meant to be. It's obviously Cinderella in her beautiful ball gown, and I just love this jumper. It's from QED London, and I love how it makes me look like Cinderella, but it also makes me look like a bat. Love it. If you've had a chance to see Cinderella, I would love to know what you thought. Also, what is your favourite live action adaptation by Disney so far? And are you excited about any of the ones coming up? Like Dumbo or Beauty and the Beast, or they've just announced Mulan. Exciting. So you can let me know all of that by commenting down below, or you can tweet at me here. Also, if you wanted to know some of my thoughts on the new Frozen short, Frozen Fever, which got released ahead of Cinderella in the cinemas, you can check out my review here. And also, if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more, don't forget to like and subscribe so I can bring you some more movie goodness. So that's all from me for now. Have an absolutely wonderful day, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye!